Hello, today we were going to go over how to wrap knees for squats. This isn't a raw specific video because it can be applied to multiply and single ply lifting, but I am a raw lifter, so all my experience is with raw lifting in wraps. So to start off, if you're thinking about jumping into wraps, there are a couple things to consider. Wraps are the equivalent of bondage in raw lifting. So you actually have to learn how to wrap yourself, wrap other people, and how to actually squat in wraps, because it's a little different than regular squatting because you have a little bit of restriction on your knee cavities and on your legs, and wraps are different. So first of all, there's no such thing as my wraps are too tight. Too tight is just right. If you feel like your wraps are too tight and they hurt, that's perfect. That's where you wanna be. You wanna get those wraps on, and it's okay for it to distract you as long as it doesn't mess up your form. So you need to practice wrapping and squatting with wraps before fully jumping into a meet with wraps. If you plan on competing in wraps, I would not suggest you jump into peak and start to learn how to use wraps then. I would suggest 6 months to a year to learn how to use wraps. At the beginning, you can wrap for the majority of your sets, learn how it feels, how your body responds to wrapping. But once you know how to squat in wraps and you feel comfortable squatting in wraps, then you should only be squatting above 75% of your training max in wraps. One of the first things that I would recommend you learn how to do in wraps is not be a pussy, because there are times where you will be wrapped and some shenanigans will go on and you can't squat for about a minute. So you have to be comfortable in your wraps in case something like that goes wrong. So now that we've got all the formalities done, let's go into how to actually start wrapping. Before you start wrapping, what you want to do is you want to spool your wraps into this helix, kind of just spool it. What this does is it makes it easy and manageable so that you're not having to whip 2 meters of wraps over your leg, under your leg, every single wrap. It just makes it easier and faster to wrap when you have your wraps spooled and you can handle it with one hand instead of 2 hands. It's easier like that and it's more manageable. So these are my unbreakable gear destroyers. If you'll notice, most wraps will have a center line, and that should help you with keeping consistency in your wrapping. The first wrap, you're aiming to catch the lip of the wrap. So it doesn't need to be super tight, but every wrap afterwards needs to be as tight as possible. When you're wrapping, you never want to pull across the knee because that can move your patella, and you don't want that to happen. And you don't want to pull across the back of your leg either, because that will mess up with the ligaments behind your knee. What you want to do is you want to pull up, lay across, and then pull down, lay across. You never want any horizontal pulling, only vertical pulling. What I aim for is to get the bottom of each wrap on this line, and that will keep a consistent wrap going through. What you want is you want to have your leg as straight as possible so that you're not trying to wrap around a corner and have some kind of like lippy inconsistency going. And you want your quad to be a little tight because it's easier to wrap on a hard surface than it is on a soft surface. So let's wrap this leg. So the first wrap, you're just aiming to catch the lip. So it's not super tight. So we pull down, lay across, pull up, lay across, pull down, lay across, pull up, lay across. And then once you get the speed of it, you can go a little quicker. So I'm coming to the end of my spool. So my top wrap isn't gonna be as tight as the rest of the wraps, just so I can tie it off. So it's a little loose. I let it go. And then I pull under. At this point, it's not very tight, but I can tighten it still so it's consistently tight throughout the leg. And there you go. My knee is wrapped. I just showed you the most basic wrapping pattern where you go one all the way up. There are different patterns. There's dozens of patterns out there. Some start at the top and go down. Some start at the bottom and go up. Some go up and then down. And there's a lot of different ways to wrap out there. But the number one most important thing about wraps is that they are tight. If your wrap is not tight, then they are not wrapped right. If you are getting too anal about your wrap jobs and start blaming missing lifts on your wraps and how they're wrapped or tightness, whatnot, then you need to go back and self-reflect, because the wraps aren't the ones doing the lifting. Wraps don't really do much for you other than add a sense of security to yourself that it's not adding 300 pounds to your squat. If like there's a lot of mental barriers going in to using wraps and not using wraps and whatnot. If you're blaming missed lifts on your wrap, you need to take a step back, reduce the weight, and focus on form. Because at the end of the day, what matters about what is a successful lift and what's not a successful lift is your personal form. Everyone and their grandmother can leg press 1,000 pounds. So the weakness isn't going to be in the legs. It's going to be in your core. It's going to be in your back. And the less core and less back that you have to use to lift, the better. So if you have perfect form, you'll have minimized those variables and you'll be more likely to hit your numbers. If you're missing your numbers consistently, then you're consistently doing something wrong. It's not the wrap's fault that you miss lifts. It's your own fault. I hope it helps some of you get more consistent wraps, learn how to wrap, and get started on your powerlifting journey. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what anyone else squats. It's what matters what you squat, because the name of the game in powerlifting is you versus you. So if you are able to get stronger and use techniques that to properly reduce your chance of injury, such as wraps and proper squat form, then at the end of the day, you're winning and you're growing. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. Tell your mom I posted. She's my #1 fan. Ask her about me sometime.